I came out here to make a video, and I'm not sure what the topic is. And this is one of those difficult situations. The focus of this channel is about things in the world that are sideways. Like, I really want you to look. I really want you to think. I really want to infect you with a mind virus. That's a really big thing for me. But my bucket is filling up a little bit today, and it'll empty out. You know, sleep helps. Going and doing something else helps. And I'm not talking about the violent bucket. But my crap bucket's kind of full today. And I've mentioned this in the past, but I think I should explain it a little more. This does not originate with me. In fact, I think it's a couple centuries old. There's been people talk about filling up your cup with joy and gratitude. And there's a converse to that, and people have talked about it and made jokes about it, probably since at least the Marquis de Sade. And it's filling up your crap bucket when you get just too much bullshit, too much BS. And some people have big buckets, and some people have little buckets, and some people's buckets empty, and some people's buckets don't. And that's one of the things that we're dealing with today. Is my bucket's a little bit on the full side for emotional peace. Now, the other side of that is that some people have very small buckets that don't empty well. And so they're on one end of a bell curve. We're going to talk about the bell curve for a moment. And we're going to talk about violence. And this has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to go be violent. I have no intentions or desire to be violent. But I'm a little, just like, I don't want to look at it right now. And we'll talk about that. So, people have a level of normalcy. There's something called a normalcy bias, where people restructure their perception of reality to assume things are normal when they're not. And a normalcy bias is actually a healthy survival tool, okay? You don't want to freak out every time the light turns red. Every time a DMV employee who had a bad day or didn't get morning sex decides to kind of pee all over you from their bureaucratic heights. You don't want to freak out about all that stuff, you know? And you want to be able to let it go. You want that bucket to be emptyable so that having a bad day, a stack of 8 or 9 of these things, like you had to go to the DMV twice, doesn't make you go postal in the 1990s sense. Because that's a bad reaction, you know? People do have that reaction. These are people on one edge of a bell curve. You have a bell curve here. There's this 0.01% of people who pull a Ted Kaczynski. Their bucket gets completely full, and they just go kind of off the deep end and get violent, okay? That's a bad thing, all right? But everybody has that limit, and that's what we got to get at here in this video. So it's prepare yourself, because I'm going to say something really uncomfortable. Ted Kaczynski wasn't wrong. Okay, his basic stuff, his basic belief system that there's a corruption of science, of academia, of society. He's not wrong. His reaction was way over the top. Okay, far into evil. But the basis, like what he was observing, was not incorrect. Doesn't defend anything he did. But his observations were not incorrect. And you may observe that the trip to the DMV, where you have the grumpy lady who didn't get her morning sex and wants to pee on you from bureaucratic heights, isn't fair. And it's not fair. And this isn't a life isn't fair, because government has to be fair. Otherwise, it's invalid. Like, to have a viable, valid government, it has to be fair. The government does. Life doesn't. So if the government treats you badly. You look too much like her husband and she's mad at her husband, whatever, then you should actually notice that. Your bucket should be a little bit full. You should notice, okay? But you shouldn't freak out and like try to firebomb the DMV that night. Way off the end of the bell curve here. Now, part of the problem with society, especially right now, is that discussing that bucket getting full for more people, that middle of the bell curve space, that is verboten. You're not allowed to talk about that. You're really, really not allowed to talk about that. However, there are situations where that bucket does get more full for more people. Usually when that happens, if it happens in an organic fashion, you have movements. The civil rights movement was largely because that bucket got really full for a lot of people. Okay, we've had revolutions because of that. We've had social movements because of that. We've had massive reorganizations because of that. We have unions because of that. Okay, it wasn't necessarily necessary if people had behaved differently in the industrial age, in the beginnings of the industrial age, but it's given the situation that it was, a lot of people's buckets got filled up and we got unions. And that's as it should be. But that spot on your bell curve is where you need to look at whether it's viable, even ethical or moral. Okay, Ted Kaczynski is way out there. He's like 0.0001% land. Where's the bucket right now? Where is the full bucket? Where is that in the bell curve? Are we in the 20% yet? Because if we're in the 20%, it's all over. It's just, things are going to change massively, and it's probably not going to be good. If we get into that 3 to 5% range, that's where you're usually going to see something like a civil war or a revolution. And it may not be super hot and violent. It might be low grade. But the bucket fills up for more people. It moves on that bell curve. And you can't just say that all violence is irrational and all violent tendencies or defenses are irrational. You know, there's a lot of protest going on right now. And this is the current events part that I don't usually talk about. A lot of protests and rioting, and a lot of the violence is very bad, okay? We found a burned up person in one of the pawn shops that got arsoned by peaceful protesters, whatever that means, in Minneapolis a couple days ago. So we now have Antifa and BLM, I don't know if you can even separate them now, killing people with their arson antics. I think that's bad. I think that's wrong. Does that mean that I think that that does not mean that I think that the internal perception of a need for violence, the filling up of your crap bucket, your bullshit bucket, for all of these protesters is necessarily wrong in their view of reality. And here's the thing, okay? Where someone like a Kaczynski is way out there in left field, he's at the edge of the bell curve. What you've got right now is you've got a percentage. I think we're in the 0.5%, 0.1 to 0.5% range in the Antifa BLM axis, where their bucket is full, but it's not necessarily full based on their own experience of reality. It's full based on a reporting and an image of reality that is presented to them. Okay? That's key. This is where I think that we need to look at, if you want to look at blame and responsibility, creative responsibility, engineering reality, you need to look at what's being reported. Okay? I will talk to people who are in full support of every protest in Portland for the last 2 years. All of the violence doesn't matter. It's fully justifiable. You know, you can't deny the validity of the claims based on a few bad apples. And that was literally said to me. Okay, I acknowledge that viewpoint, but I think that that viewpoint is programmed. It's informed by basically media reporting. It's a manufactured reality. It's not informed by direct view. Okay, this is not someone who has watched 2 years of video. I've been watching the videos of the weekend riots for over 2 years. Like, I watch this stuff, and I have an opinion on it. This is someone who moved recently and just they have a social group, and this is how things go, and there's the blame and there's the justification. But it's a manufactured reality. It's not an experienced reality. You know, this is not a person who goes down and participates in launching fireworks mortars at police. This is a person who's has a social network of people who report a manufactured reality. So the buckets are getting full. And I think the buckets are getting full for a lot of people. What I question, and what I want you to question, is whether those buckets are getting full because of an experienced reality, an accurate reality, a verifiable reality, or if it's manufactured reality. It's a pretty important question. So today I come out my temporary bucket, my random access bucket's a little full. I've been looking at news, which I don't usually do early in the day. I try to figure out some sort of digest in the evening. I broke my rule. I looked at some news today. And it's all very disturbing, okay? We're ignoring China. We're ignoring what is possibly an actual need for a ground war with China in favor of yelling about whether or not Trump's repeating of the New York Times claims that mail-in voting has issues is accurate or not. Like, yeah, mail-in voting has issues. We know this. This isn't like some new thing. We've known this for decades, you know. Whether you can solve those issues, whether you can solve in-person voting issues with the pandemic scare, these are questions. These are technical questions that you can actually ask and answer and debate and figure out. But that's not what's going on. What's going on is Trump said it, it's bad, get pissed off, and your bucket's a little more full with manufactured reality. No matter what Trump actually said, it doesn't matter. It's Trump, 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 Trump. The only thing that matters is that Trump was said in the report. Now, you also have to ask yourself why people are manufacturing that much anger towards Trump from establishment media, and the answer is probably that they want the establishment candidate back in power so they can continue to do establishment things to you. Something to think about. You know, I'm not huge on the conspiracy of the establishment, but, you know, it's the establishment telling you to hate Trump. Maybe there's a reason for that. Now, back to the buckets. Your bucket should empty, okay? My temporary bucket, I call it, is just a little bit full. Today, I'm just a little, you know, I look at it and I just shake my head. And I know it's just today's outrage. I know that half of the stuff that I looked at today is going to be gone tomorrow. It's going to leave people anxious and angry, and I'm going to sleep it off. You know, I'll probably go do something else here in a few minutes and empty my bucket completely. Half an hour of meditation and boom, instant. But where's your bucket? What's filling your bucket? I hate to say it, but what kind of manure is your bucket filled with? Is it organic? Is it manufactured? Is it petroleum products? Have fun with this metaphor. You can go like really far with this. Is this bat guano from South America, or is this organic, homegrown yard pig composted manure? Your bucket's going to fill up. Okay, I really don't see a whole lot of ways that society is going to go right now that isn't going to result in people getting their bucket more full. Okay, the DMV is not going to get better. The IRS is not going to get better. The authoritarian left is not going to get better. Okay, they're going to insist that every time you do something they don't like, it's bad, and everything they do something you don't like, it's holy. It's very one-sided. It's not going to get better. So, if your bucket's going to fill up, make sure you fill it up with high-quality shit. And make sure that you keep the cycling, you keep it emptied on a cyclic basis, a daily basis, as much as possible. Because I really do worry that things are going to go a little bit sideways pretty soon. I'm very interested to see what happens this fall. It's bound to have a lot of amusement, but it's also probably going to have some non-amusing effects or factors. Anyway, keep your bucket handy. Don't let it get too full. Try to figure out who's manufacturing your reality and whether or not the outrage that you feel, the outrage and the anxiety, has a basis in your reality. All right? Stay sideways. See you soon.